Robert Ross is the Executive Director of Connecticut Office of Military Affairs. He has a long history in military affairs. He advises the governor and legislator on defense industry issues, and is a primary liaison to the Connecticut Congressional Delegation on military and defense matters. He's responsible for coordinating statewide efforts to protect and promote Connecticut military bases and defense industries. He also represents the state in efforts in enhancing the quality of life for the service members and military families residing in Connecticut. He's a retired naval officer who piloted aircraft carriers. That sounds really cool. He holds an MA in National Security Strategy from the U.S. Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, and an MA in Public Policy and Administration from UConn, another local man. So Robert, could you fill us in on military affairs? Thank you.
I brought my name tag myself because all my notes are on the back of it. Al, Susan, thank you for having me here today. I really enjoy this part of the state, and I really enjoy this job. I'm going to talk a little bit about big picture stuff with submarines, and then we'll talk about the submarine base. And I also work on defense industry assistance agreements from the state, but I'm going to leave that to EB to talk about. So I'm just going to focus on the sub base. I like to tell people that BRAC, base realignment and closure, is something that drives fear into the hearts of people, but it also promotes romance. And I'm going to talk about why it promotes romance. In a previous life, I used to be the Director of Community Relations for the Atlantic Fleet. So that was all 13 major Navy bases on the East Coast, and all the ships and all the people. And so that was my view of the Atlantic Fleet. Groton was just one of those bases, and it didn't have a very good reputation. It was kind of a pain. And in the '93 BRAC, I was a spokesman at the Pentagon, and part of my job was to explain why it made all the sense in the world to close the sub-base in Groton. And I had no idea that 15 years later, my job would be to keep it open and explain why it makes no sense to close that base. Kind of makes me feel like a slimy lawyer, but I'm not. Back in the '93 BRAC, community relations weren't so good here. We had real problems with the school districts, with the local community blaming the Navy for everything wrong. It was the Navy's fault that you had traffic problems and parking problems, and their kids were dumbing down the schools. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that was coming from this area. You didn't have a very good relationship with the local press. Channel 8 used to get in little boats and go up the river and touch a submarine, and then put a gotcha news story out there. And at the Pentagon, that is what they see. That decision makers see that every morning, and it shapes their perception. And whether it's true or not doesn't matter. That's what they see. That's what they think about. And so when a BRAC comes along and you've got the chance to rid yourself of something you don't like, you take it. That has all changed. The reputation that we enjoy in the Pentagon is better than it has ever been. Sub-base is held out as a model of great community relations. Something else that's changed is the preeminence of the submarine in fleet operations. The Pacific Fleet Commander recently testified before Congress, and he didn't ask for more aircraft carriers. He didn't ask for more planes. He said, I need more submarines, and I need them now. You can't build enough, and you can't build them fast enough. The role of the submarine in our national defense is more important now than it has ever been. And that's good news for anybody that has a submarine base. So what have we done to prepare? So we're in a better place than we were in 2005. After that second BRAC where we almost lost the base, the state made a commitment of $40 million of investments to help work with the Navy to resolve issues that came up during that BRAC assessment. And I'm glad we did that back then, because going for new money today is not very easy. But having that authorization already in place that we can draw upon has been a huge benefit for us. And we've invested about $14 million into a variety of projects at the base to really demonstrate partnership. There's been about $300 million worth of projects at the base. Only $14 million paid for by the state of Connecticut. So we're a very important partner, but we're a small partner in a much greater enterprise to transform that base. I remember the first time I drove on the base with my wife on my way to Newport. This base I had talked so much about, and I drove through the gate, and I just remember this like it was yesterday. I turned to my wife and I said, wow, this is the ugliest Navy base I have ever seen. You go onto this base today and it looks totally different. You have athletic fields right there. You have new roads. You have old buildings being torn down, new buildings going up. It looks more like a college campus every day. Buildings that are built specifically for what we intend to do with them, not shoving sailors into buildings that were built in the early 1900s. So it's a big transformation, and it's a fun thing to be a part of. I have a very good relationship with the commanding officer of the base. We talk all the time. We meet with the school superintendents, Captain Whitescarver and I, every month. Not because there's a crisis, because we have a conversation going on. And we want to make sure that our relationship with the public schools is the best it can be. And kids in transition sometimes need help. And if we help those Navy kids in transition, we help all kids in transition. And so we work on a lot of things like school physicals and immunization records and those things that don't seem very important at the time, but they're quality of life busters. We fix those things in advance by meeting with the superintendents every month. We call that the Military Superintendent Liaison Committee. I'm also involved in a lot of other committees down here in southeastern Connecticut. So I'm on the Water Taxi Committee, I'm on the Thames River Heritage Park Committee, the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition. We did the Coast Guard Summer, we did the Connecticut Submarine Century. We're getting ready to help UConn, I am anyway, to help UConn celebrate their 50th. So why do I do all that stuff? Because it's not about one thing. It's about everything when it comes to quality of life. Everything matters, whether it's trying to help spouses find jobs, kids in schools, transportation systems that help the military community. We're embarking on a joint land use study now with the local communities to make sure that the base operations are never interfered with by the local communities, that we understand the benefit of having the Navy here, and the Navy understands the benefit that the communities offer to them. So it's a two-way thing. So that joint land use study is underway right now. It's going to really shape our decision-making for years to come. I want to kind of tee up something with you. On June 6th, Groton will receive, the Council of Governments of Southeastern Connecticut will receive a Great American Defense Community Award, one of 8 communities in the country to receive this national award. And it's an award that recognizes these partnerships, these great community relations that we have, the innovative things that we're doing on the base. So we should all be proud of that. Now, we nominated the Council of Governments because it was the only organization we could find that had an umbrella that really wrapped everybody in, all the municipalities, because it's not just about Groton or New London, it's about the whole region. So on June 6th, the Navy will commemorate their annual commemoration of the Battle of Midway. We'll have an event at the subbase, and at that event, we'll receive this national award. That is such a tremendous change, a different place to be than we were back in 2005. I did mention that the UConn campus is turning 50 this year. I think that's something that everybody should embrace and try to figure out how you can be a part of. And, the UConn Avery Point has such a great history with the Navy and the Coast Guard, and I want to make sure that that history is never forgotten. I've talked a lot about the programs that we're doing at the base. I just released an annual report that you can see on the OMA website, so it's www.ct.gov/OMA for Office of Military Affairs. And you can click on Read the latest annual report. And it's got lots of graphs and lots of pictures, and it's written at about the 8th grade level. So it doesn't make your eyes roll back, but it tells this narrative that we have, the work that we have been doing for the last 10 years to get ready for the next BRAC when it comes. Now, there's a big unknown out there. We don't know about the Trump administration and their thinking about BRAC. We know Congress is still not happy with the last BRAC. And there's a lot of reasons to be unhappy. It was projected to cost $21 billion. It cost $35 billion. The return on that doesn't start until 2018 at about $3 billion a year. I mean, so financially, that BRAC was a disaster. And Congress is not sitting on the edge of their seats ready to say yes again. But we're going to have to make an adjustment. And the big question that they're asking in Congress now is, the Trump administration wants to grow the fleet, and that's a great thing. But does it make sense to close bases while you're growing your Navy? You want to give up this parking spot that you have here that you can't recreate anywhere else? Probably not. So I tease Joe Courtney all the time, and I tell him that we're ready for BRAC. I'd like to have a BRAC right now. Everything is in alignment for us. I don't know about 5 years, but I'm ready right now. So I encourage you to go look at that annual report. It tells a wonderful story about what we've been doing for the last decade. The National Coast Guard Museum, I'll end on this. This is another thing that my office works on. I was tasked with coordinating all the state agency support for that project. The good news for Groton is you're going to have the best view when it's built, when it starts, and probably about 2022, I think. It's been really interesting to try to corral all the state agencies that have had a little piece of this big enterprise. But it really has been fun to work with all the different commissioners to get their people to say, yes, we want that National Coast Guard Museum, and we want it right here in New London, right in the center of the city at that transportation hub. But as I said, you're going to have the best view from Groton. So I'm going to wrap up short because I know there's probably a lot of questions, and I will leave time for that. But I would end by saying this. This subbase is in such a better place than it was before. And it's in a better place because of a lot of hard work, a lot of investment, and all of us should be proud of how we've transformed that base. Thanks.